Ilara had never felt fear like this before. She crouched behind a jagged rock, her chest rising and falling with rapid breaths, listening to the eerie wind whispering through the high peaks. The alien world around her was unlike anything she had ever known. The mountains rose like frozen waves, jagged and sharp, stretching endlessly into the clouds. Strange violet vegetation clung stubbornly to the cliffs, and streams of silvery water flowed down from heights she dared not climb. For weeks, she had been running. Weeks of fleeing from a faction that wanted her captured, though she didn't fully understand why. She only knew that being caught meant something far worse than death. And death was something she had already danced with too, many times in her life. Her shelter was a small cave tucked behind a rockfall, nearly invisible from the sky. She had spent hours arranging the entrance, covering it with loose stones and alien foliage to make it appear like a natural part of the mountains. Inside, she had little more than a blanket she carried from her ship and a pack with some basic supplies. Every day she scavenged food from the alien terrain, strange fruits that glowed faintly at night, roots that tasted bitter but kept her alive, and water from the streams. It was not the harsh environment that worried her most. Though it was enough to make her hands raw and her muscles ache, it was the knowledge that she was not alone. She could feel it sometimes, the faint brush of presence, like eyes watching her from a distance. She tried to shake it off as imagination, a product of her isolation. But deep down, she knew better. The first real sign of danger came on the third day. She had been gathering food along a ridge when she heard the sound, a low, vibrating growl that rolled through the mountain air. Her stomach tightened. She froze, scanning the terrain, but saw nothing. The growl came again, closer this time. Her heart pounded. Whatever it was enormous. Her first instinct was to run, but she had learned quickly that speed alone would not save her here. The mountains were treacherous, and one wrong step could send her plummeting hundreds of feet. So she stayed still, crouching low, her breath shallow. A shadow moved against the rocks. She saw it then, a massive creature, taller than a human, with a muscular build and eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. Its fur was dark and thick, streaked with silver, and its movements were graceful, almost calculated. The Alpha King Ilara had heard stories of the Alpha King from the few humans who had encountered him before. He was no ordinary beast. He was intelligent, cunning, and unmatched in tracking and hunting. To most, he was a legend, a terrifying predator that lived in the mountains. To Ilara, he was very real, very dangerous, and now very close. For hours, she watched him from her hidden spot. He moved silently, sniffing the air, his head turning as if he could sense her exact location. Ilara realized he was not just following a trail. He was studying her, learning her patterns, predicting her movements. Her fear was sharp, but beneath it was something else, a challenge. She had survived too much to let a creature, even one as powerful as this, make her its prey. Days passed. She adjusted her movements, traveling only at night, hiding during the day. She set small traps, loose rocks, makeshift alarms, using the strange vegetation, anything to give herself a warning. And yet no matter what she did, she felt his presence. At night, she would hear the soft crunch of claws on stone, the whisper of his breathing carried on the wind. He was always there, always patient. One evening, as she climbed a particularly steep ridge to gather edible fruits, she felt it. The air shifted. The hairs on her arms stood on end. She froze, heart hammering. In the dim light of the alien sunset, she saw him. The Alpha King had found her again. His massive form was silhouetted against the sky, eyes locked on hers. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Ilara's mind raced. She could not fight him. She was human, and he was a predator bred to hunt in these mountains. But she had something he did not: intelligence, creativity, and the will to survive. Slowly, she backed away, careful not to make a sound. Her plan was simple: retreat, observe, and outsmart. The next few days were a tense game of cat and mouse. She moved carefully, never leaving her tracks obvious. She created false trails, using rocks and alien plants, hoping to confuse him. She spent hours climbing cliffs to scout the terrain from above, trying to predict where he might be. Every night, she listened to his movements, noting patterns, learning his hunting style, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, she began to understand him. The Alpha King was not mindless. He was strategic, intelligent, and fiercely proud. He did not hunt for sport alone. He hunted to survive, to maintain his dominance, to respect the balance of the mountains. He was unlike any creature she had faced. One night, while resting in her cave, she heard something new, a soft, almost curious sniffing. It was close, but not threatening. She peeked outside, and there he was again. The Alpha King crouched on a ridge above her, watching. He did not move forward. He did not attack. Instead, he observed, Ilara felt a strange mixture of fear and fascination. For the first time, she considered that this hunt was not only a test of strength, but a test of mind. Ilara spent the night thinking, planning. If she could not outrun him, perhaps she could outthink him. She studied the terrain, noting weak spots in the cliffs, hidden paths, and places where the rocky landscape could work in her favor. She realized that survival depended not only on avoiding him, but also on using the environment as a weapon. The following day, she executed her plan. She led him on a chase through narrow ridges and steep inclines, forcing him to navigate treacherous terrain that limited his size and power. She used her traps, her decoys, and her understanding of the mountains to stay just out of reach. And all the while, she watched him adapt, learn, and anticipate her moves. By the end of the day, exhaustion overtook both of them. Ilara found a hidden ledge and collapsed, panting, while the Alpha King stopped at a distance, observing. There was no aggression in his stance, only focus. Ilara realized something profound. This was not just a predator hunting prey. This was a creature testing her, as much as she was testing him. As night fell, the tension between them did not dissipate. She knew he was close, perhaps only a few dozen feet away, hidden in the shadows. She could feel his gaze, his intelligence pressing against her own. For the first time, she felt a strange connection. A mutual respect born from the dance of survival. Ilara lay on the ledge, staring at the stars above. She thought of home, of the life she had lost, and of the countless dangers that had brought her here. Yet, amidst the fear, there was exhilaration. She had faced death, hunger, and a predator far stronger than herself. She had survived. The Alpha King did not leave. Instead, he remained a silent sentinel in the shadows, watching, learning. And Ilara realized that the mountains, harsh and unforgiving as they were, had become a testing ground, a place where human intelligence could stand. Against the mightiest of alien predators, the story of her survival was only beginning. The hunt had changed. It was no longer just about fleeing. It was about understanding, anticipating, and perhaps even forging a strange alliance with a creature as fierce and proud as the Alpha King. The part ends with her lying under the stars, listening to the distant growls and soft steps of the Alpha King, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges. And deep within her, a spark of determination burned brighter than ever. She would survive. Not by luck, not by hiding, but by the one thing that made humans formidable, her mind. The first light of dawn crept over the jagged mountains, painting the peaks in pale gold. Ilara stretched, sore but alert. The night had been long, filled with the distant steps of the Alpha King and the echo of his low, intelligent growls. She had slept lightly, one eye always open, always aware. Today, she knew, would bring a new challenge. The Alpha King was patient, cunning, and relentless. He did not attack blindly. He observed, learned, and adapted. And Ilara had to do the same. She packed her meager supplies and set off along a narrow ridge, careful not to leave obvious tracks. Every rock, every step, every shadow mattered. She had learned to move like the wind, silent and precise. Using the environment as both shield and weapon, hours passed, and the mountains seemed almost alive. Winds whipped through the peaks, carrying the scent of alien plants and distant waterfalls. Ilara's eyes scanned constantly. She knew he was nearby. She could feel his presence like a weight pressing against the edge of her awareness. And then she saw him. The Alpha King stood on a distant ridge, silhouetted against the sky. His eyes glowed faintly, watching her. He did not move toward her, but the intensity of his gaze told her he was calculating, planning. It was a test, and Ilara was determined to pass. She led him on a careful path through the mountains. Moving from ridge to ridge, cliff to cliff, each step was deliberate. She tested his reactions, observed his patterns, and learned how he anticipated her movements. Slowly, she began to feel a strange respect for the creature. He was not simply a predator. He was intelligent, strategic, and disciplined, qualities she valued deeply by midday. She reached a canyon known for its unstable cliffs and rocky outcrops. It was a dangerous place, but it offered her an advantage. If she could lure the Alpha King here, she could use the terrain to her benefit. She paused at the edge, looking down at the narrow gorge below. One misstep, and she could fall hundreds of feet, but she had no choice. This was the culmination of her plan. She moved carefully along the canyon's edge, leaving subtle clues for the Alpha King to follow. He did not need much prompting. The faint sense, the disturbed rocks, the careful movement of her body, he understood it all. He followed, silent and precise, like a shadow moving across the stone. Ilara's heart pounded as she navigated the canyon. She set traps using loose rocks and hidden ledges. She created decoys to confuse him, hoping to delay his approach. And all the while she observed him. He was clever, avoiding some traps and triggering others. It was a battle of wits as much as it was a test of endurance. Hours passed. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the canyon floor. Ilara paused at a narrow ledge, catching her breath. She looked up and saw the Alpha King approaching a tricky section of rock, a place where a single misstep could send him tumbling. This was her chance. Carefully, she triggered a trap, dislodging a large boulder that crashed down the canyon. The sound echoed like thunder. The Alpha King halted just in time to avoid being hit, his eyes narrowing as he recalculated his path. Ilara's pulse raced. He was not defeated. He had learned, adapted, survived, and she realized that she respected him even more for it. The canyon grew darker as night approached. The air was cool, carrying the scent of damp stone and alien moss. Ilara climbed to a high ledge, hoping to find a vantage point. From here, she could see the Alpha King moving below, his large frame graceful, despite the treacherous terrain. It was clear now, this hunt was no longer simply predator and prey. It was a test of intelligence, courage, and endurance. Ilara made a daring decision. Instead of hiding, she stepped onto a narrow ridge directly in his path. Her movements were deliberate and calm. She wanted him to see her, to recognize her courage. The Alpha King stopped, eyes locking with hers. In that moment, something unspoken passed between them, a mutual acknowledgement of strength and respect. She spoke softly, not expecting a response, but almost hoping for understanding. "I am not your enemy," she said. Her voice carried across the canyon. "I only want to survive." The Alpha King tilted his head, studying her. He did not attack. Instead, he crouched slightly, a gesture that suggested thought rather than aggression. Ilara realized that he understood more than she had imagined. He was not a mindless predator. He was intelligent, capable of recognizing courage and cleverness. Night fell fully, and the stars above sparkled like distant fires. The mountains were alive with sounds, the rustling of alien plants, the distant howl of creatures, and the soft movements of the Alpha King nearby. Ilara and the Alpha King shared the canyon in silence, neither advancing, neither retreating. It was a delicate balance, a tense truce forged by mutual respect. The following day, Ilara explored the canyon further, looking for resources and planning her next move. The Alpha King followed at a distance, never attacking but always watching, she realized that she had changed. Fear was still present, but it was accompanied by determination, intelligence, a growing understanding of this magnificent creature. She decided to test him. Using a hidden path, she led him to a series of narrow ledges and unstable rocks. The challenge was clear. Could he navigate the treacherous terrain without falling? He moved carefully, calculating every step. Ilara watched, impressed by his precision and adaptability. For the first time, she felt that survival in these mountains was not about escaping danger, but about understanding and respecting it. Days turned into nights, and the game of observation and strategy continued. Ilara learned the Alpha King's habits, his intelligence, and his ability to adapt. She realized that she could communicate with him in subtle ways, gestures, pauses, and strategic movements. He responded not with words, but with understanding. A silent bond began to form, built on respect, courage, and intelligence. One evening, after a long day of careful navigation and observation, Ilara found a small ledge overlooking the canyon. She rested, watching the stars, feeling the cool night air on her face. The Alpha King approached silently, sitting a few feet away, his eyes reflecting the starlight. There was no threat in his posture, only presence. Ilara smiled faintly, feeling a strange sense of companionship. "We are alike," she whispered. Both survivors, both fighters, both aware. The Alpha King did not move, but she felt his attention, his recognition of her words, even without understanding them fully. It was a connection born of shared experience, a bond formed in the crucible of survival. As the days continued, Ilara and the Alpha King learned from each other. She taught herself to move with even more precision and care, using the terrain as her ally. He, in turn, demonstrated patience, intelligence, and an understanding that went beyond instinct. Together, they navigated the mountains, surviving the harsh environment and growing stronger with each challenge. Eventually, Ilara realized that the mountains, once a place of fear and danger, had become a proving ground. Here, intelligence, courage, and respect mattered more than raw strength. She had faced one of the most formidable creatures in the galaxy and had survived, not through violence, but through wit, observation, and understanding. The story concludes with Ilara standing on a high ledge, looking out over the jagged peaks. The Alpha King sat beside her, a silent companion, a creature that had once hunted her, but now seemed to respect her. Together, they faced the endless mountains. Ready for whatever challenges lay ahead, in the harsh alien wilderness, human ingenuity and courage had prevailed. And for the first time, Ilara felt a sense of triumph and hope. She was not merely surviving, she was thriving. And she had done so with the Alpha King by her side. A living testament to the power of intelligence, respect, and determination, the mountains echoed with their silent understanding. A reminder that even in the most unforgiving places, humans could endure, adapt, and overcome.